We are live. We are live. We are
We
live
are
for
live on
for
the
the
podcast.
podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are watching today on YouTube, we have multiple ways of streaming, of broadcasting. So we
We're
have
going
the
global.
YouTube stream as usual, and then our new fancy page. Ty, why don't you talk about the page on Instagram?
Well, to make it easy for our fans, it has the same handle as our Twitter page at On The Bump DSN. And what we're doing with this page is, we're just trying to interact with the fans in a new way. We're getting a little visual with our what we're bringing to the table. Maybe we'll post some videos. We're doing a fun little countdown. I tend to go crazy with some of the Instagram stories where I posted something. I don't think Nick saw it yet, where I posted reposted Clint's latest Instagram post and added on the music to That's Life by Frank Sinatra and said, let's go to Clint. So hopefully Clint sees it. I posted a story the other day that was one of Talking Yanks with John Boy and Jake, one of their Valentine's graphics for Jason Dominguez, who most of you listening may or may not know is probably the hottest prospect in the Yankees organization. He viewed the Instagram story, so we're getting major here.
And again, if you're on Instagram, as some of you are at this point, I can see you guys. Anything you want to ask us in the questions, we will answer as the podcast goes on. At any point, we will drop the hat and come right back into our topics. So I'll try to give my attention to the Instagram guys. How are you guys doing? You'll see me, hear me, and you will also hear Todd.
I'll man the YouTube
right there. So we're everywhere right now. We have a lot to talk about today on the podcast. Obviously, we will be getting into the second round of the baseball preview, which is the National League Central, which is going to be an interesting one because looking at the projected totals, it's going to be an interesting division. And we'll get into that later this week. We actually have projected totals to go off of, and we'll continue our predictions. But first, a lot happened this week free agency wise. And starting with, I would think, the biggest one, not necessarily free agent wise, but it was a signing, and it is Fernando Tatis, who signed a 14-year. The number total, I think, is 340. I just had it in front of me, 340, right? Yeah, 340. So 14 years, 340. He will be paid by the Padres till I am 40 years old, which is crazy to think about.
Let's not talk about that.
So the AAV is pretty strong for a guy his age. I believe the AAV comes in at 24 million, somewhere around there. But when you compare it to other guys' AAVs in the league right now that are comparable to him in age and play, because realistically, Tatis, and I think Tatis is going to be a phenomenal baseball player. I think that this deal will work out for the Padres. But he had 1 year of this success that would warrant that kind of contract. I know you're paying for what he can be, and if he is what he can be, you've got a steal. You've got an absolute steal in a contract at a 24 AAV. But we talk about Ronald Acuna, who I think's AAV is 16 million or 17 million for the next 3 years, 4 years, and I'm sure he'll get a new contract soon. They'll probably rip that up. And then there's Ozzy Albies, same guy in Atlanta.
Ozzy makes like nothing. His agent should be fired. Not nothing, because $7 million or whatever
It's
it is
something,
not nothing.
yeah.
I would take $7 million, but
Correct.
compared to what his value would be in the open market, it's crap.
Correct. And also, when you talk about the Braves, I mean, they kind of did it right, where they got these guys on a good deal before they can hit arbitration, before they hit any of that, just to get ahead of the game a little bit. And that's what the Padres are doing. If he turns into that MVP all league shortstop kind of guy, 24 million is an absolute steal when you talk about the deals that are coming up right now. But 14 years is a lot. But if he's a guy you want to keep building around and you have the money in San Diego, I think this is a great deal for the Padres.
Yeah, I mean the shelf life of a shortstop is usually, once they're not productive, usually past their like 36, 37, which is the goal for all baseball players, regardless of position. So on the one hand, you're locking him up for basically the duration of all of his useful years of his career. But say he signed the difficult part about this is say he signed a 5-year $100 million contract, something right now, which you might say he's underpaid then at $20 million for 5 years. But then 5 years from now, he's 26. Then he could sign one of those Bryce Harper type deals or 10-year, or he could sign one of those $400 million contracts. So, but that's a gamble too. So they kind of took the safe side of, and it's not safe because he's getting 340 million, but they took the side of, or Tatis's agents took the side of, you're locking your guy up, you're guaranteeing his value, which is pretty significant because he only really had this past year that he was good, and it was 60 games.
And
And he's only 21. So
even that, and obviously, again, I'll reiterate, I think Tatis is going to be awesome. But even then, I mean, he slowed down at the end of the season and finished up with an average of 277, which is not bad, obviously, for a guy in his first, second year. But to finish up 277 and then get this money after that, it's not knocking the player, but I think it's an interesting timing. Again, I like the deal for them. I think it sets them up well for what they're trying to do, but it's interesting timing of it, in my opinion. But it goes to show how different teams run things, right? So the Yankees have guys in Judge, Torres, obviously different circumstances, but they're going to wait almost to the last minute. And you have guys like the Padres who are going to do it after 1 year. So obviously the service time's different, but very interesting.
looking back, his team, or in general, when we look back 14 years from now, if we look back on the Tatis contract, we're probably going to say either, no one's going to say it was fair value. They're either going to say he was way underpaid, that he could have gotten more money, or maybe not way underpaid, but that he could have gotten more money, or they're going to say, wow, his career flamed out and Padres wasted a lot of money. But either way, I think Tatis is going to feel okay with taking this deal at this time. You can't really go wrong with doing this.
It's a fine risk for him, and also you're talking about an era of baseball that I personally think will improve for the players going forward, meaning the way they're going to advertise themselves off the field and on the field. I think they're going to be able to make more money that way. I think you're in an era where money is going to be similar to basketball players, and the fact that they get X amount of the contract, but then they get probably double that in sponsorship. So I think we're closer to that. So I don't think he has to worry about
Yeah,
if he's locked up where
he will
wants to
be
be.
one of the faces of baseball for the next 10 years.
But shout out San Diego. Shout out the fact that they're paying Manny Machado $300 million contract, or very close to it. I think it's 300. Tatis $300 million contract. 3 straight years they've given out lucrative deals, with Hosmer adding to that addition. They're spending money on these players, and they're continuing to spend money via free agents, right? So this offseason they went on a spree also and brought in Yu Darvish, Yu Darvish and Blake Snell, right? That was the two they brought in. I feel like that was like a year ago, and it was only like a month ago. Yu Darvish and Blake Snell come in. Blake Snell's going to need a contract. Yeah, so they brought in guys. They continue to add talent while they've already set this high payroll. So shout out to them. Shout out to teams that'll spend money and not sit on it. And
hey,
well, I'm not even. If that sounded like it was a shot at like the Yankees or the Red Sox, I mean, it really wasn't. It was more a shot at the Rockies and the Pirates and the Rays and those teams. It's more of a shot at those than it was anything.
Pirates have no money. Rays don't draw any fans, and I don't know what to tell you about the Rockies. Well, and the Indians' payroll is going to be very low too.
Yeah, but at least they have talent. Shane Bieber, Jose Ramirez. If they somehow find a way not to trade those guys and lock them up, I will keep the Indians off the list. But the Rockies are interesting to me, and I thought about it more after we talked about them. I think it was last week. I thought about it more, and they're in a situation where you have two teams in the NL East who are going to be NL West, who are going to be dominant. So if there's ever a time to kind of blow it up and just reset for a few years, it's probably now. You have the Dodgers and Padres who aren't going anywhere. The Diamondbacks are still close to, if not better than you.
They're
And the
a fringe
Giants
team that could be a second wild card team.
Yeah, but so the Rockies, if you're ever going to blow it up, this probably was the time with how that division is shaping out to be. If you're in the American League, I don't think you have a reason in any division to just kind of blow it up. I don't. I think every division you have a shot at least at a wild card spot. Um, have they decided on the playoff situation yet? Is it the same as last year?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
I can look it up while you talk.
I have no idea. So
I,
there's nothing to talk about. But
I know they're still talking about some of the things like the DH possibly still coming into play.
no,
Still
DH is done for 2021. They decided.
Oh, is that what they said?
LDH,
I thought they said they were still
is
talking about it. Okay,
no.
that's fine, I guess. I don't see anything here that says the playoff situation, so I'm gonna assume it's going back to normal, would be my assumption.
Apparently, the NLDH thing, Yu Darvish today had a bit of a complaint. He came up with something where he said, I think he said guys 34 and older should not have to hit, which like maybe something like that
But
could
I
come into
mean,
place.
listen,
I mean, he was totally joking, but like actually it's not a terrible idea.
as much as the way the Mets are constructed, of course, I would love the DH this year. I still am a National League guy at heart.
For our guy Dom Smith.
For our guy Dom. Well, I actually think it means more for JD Davis than it does Dom Smith. Because Dom Smith can be in left field. He can manage in left field. While JD Davis, we talked about it last week. I don't want to see him in those situations. But I am a purist at heart, and I like to see my guys hit. So that'll be fun to see again for National League. It'll be a little normal for a year. But then again, if in 2021, if we go back to the DH, I'll be perfectly okay with it. I don't hate either way. Maybe that's how I should say it. I think I hate how it affects the Mets this year. But Mets can make that work with a couple moves. I still think they do, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
I think it's one of the worst rules in sports, but we're not going to get it. I'm not going to make that a whole thing this episode, but
yeah, we're not going to go too far.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that pitchers hit. It's just they do not trying to hit a baseball as a professional baseball player is an impossible task. It's probably the most impossible task in sports to hit a tiny ball that is coming at you at 100 miles an hour. To try and get a pitcher who's not trained in it to do that it's pointless.
I think it adds strategy though to the game. I mean, we don't want to dive too deep, but I think it adds strategy with bunts and substitution. I wish they took away
the fans want runs.
Well, I think also if you really want to go with the purism and you want strategy, you should also and simultaneously you should not have the 3-batter rule because I think that kind of works together. Yeah, and same thing with the extra inning rule. That might be the worst rule of the three of them. But not gonna, like we said, not gonna go too far into that. The rest of the signing, there's some little ones here. We'll go through. Obviously, Yankees and Mets had one. The Mets signed Kevin Pillar.
Nick Froze. This is our weekly edition of Nick Froze. So we can play what is Nick doing right now? What was the next sentence out of Nick's mouth? And I think the next sentence out of Nick's mouth probably was going to be something about, Clint Frazier being a candidate for comeback player of the year. It could have been something surrounding his love for Luis Severino and how he thinks that Luis is going to be a superstar, a Cy Young award-winning pitcher in the future, which I think if you got Nick's top 5 pitchers, it would include Jacob deGrom, Luis Severino. He would say Noah Syndergaard. He would admit Garrett Cole too. Who do you spit? Probably Clayton Kershaw. Nick is saying his laptop froze. The time is currently, I don't know what time it is. It's 6:51, and you're on the Bump podcast. Um, we're having some technical difficulties at the time. I'm going to keep talking because Nick said I should keep talking because he might not be on for a while. What other topics were we going to cover today? I believe so. We got into Fernando Tatis. We know the deal there with what's going on. That contract could go either way. It could be a great deal. It's going to be one of two extremes there. It's not going to be either or. I wrote down a list of topics to Nick at one point. Let me try and pull those up. I could even do history right now if we want to do that. I might actually do that. Let's let's let's. I had researched some history. I will try and pull it up again. I think one of the main points that I had found that was history related was, which one was it? This is an interesting story. So Joe Nuxhall, 15 years old, on this day in 1944, middle of World War II too. So baseball was probably at that time, a lot of the main players were overseas at war. You think of the Ted Williams, a lot of their prime war years or prime years were taken because of the war. So then you bring in a guy like Joe Nuxhall, 15 years old, from Hamilton, Ohio. The Reds called him up. They said, "Hey, we need you in Cincinnati. We need to sign you. We need you in our rotation. We're really short on players." So 15 years old, Joe Nuxhall obviously couldn't be in the war yet. 15-year-olds didn't really go to war, although some at the time did, fudge some papers, fake their age. It was easier at that time, and that's what they did to try and fight for the country. Joe Nuxhall, I'm not saying he should have done that, but he didn't do that. He didn't fake his age at that point. He instead decided, I'm going to become a baseball pitcher at 15 years old. The day after a high school basketball game, Joe Nuxhall was called up by the Reds and signed to the major league roster. He tossed 2/3 of an inning. Nick's computer is updating, so this is going to be interesting. He tossed 2/3 of an inning in a game in June, 49 days before his 16th birthday, which is pretty shocking. And then I believe, if I recall this story correctly, because I've heard this one before about Joe Nuxhall, I believe he didn't pitch again in the major leagues for another 8 years, which he still was 23 8 years from then. So that's not that crazy. I got an update from our co-host Nick, whose computer is updating. I'm going to suggest he goes on his phone. Producer Bob will join us today, and this is turning into the Todd Gerstenhaber show now on the Bump, or on the Daily Sports Network. On the Daily Sports Network. This is a Daily Sports Network produced podcast. Nick is the CEO of the Daily Sports Network. He has had several podcasts come and go here. Looking at my list of topics, some that maybe we'll get Nick's opinion on later on is Kevin Pillar to the Mets. So Nick had a source that said Nick had a source that he heard that Jackie Bradley Jr. was going to sign with the New York Mets. So when the New York Mets went in the direction of Kevin Pillar, that's a different. That was a bit of a shock to us and our very reliable sources. Nick has him. Nick has connections, big shot, big connections. And he got a scoop a few weeks ago that said the Mets and Jackie Bradley Jr. were close on a 2-year deal. That obviously didn't happen. Nick. So Nick's source, maybe the Mets were close on a 2-year deal with Jackie Bradley Jr., but I have a feeling that Steve Cohen has the mind of an investor, and he's going to make moves that correlate to long-term profitability of his team. And if I had to guess, Jackie Bradley Jr. probably wanted more money on a longer-term deal than Kevin Pillar. Kevin Pillar is great defensively. Jackie Bradley Jr. is also obviously great defensively. Their bats are both kind of weak. Kevin Pillar's bat is extremely weak from what I know, just based on the eye test. He does not hit for power or really average. He's like, I would characterize him as a poor man's Kiermaier. Wow, we are back. I was in the middle of, I rambled on about, I did history. I did a history bit.
Oh, this is awesome.
I talked about Joe Nuxhall being a 15-year-old pitcher in 1944. I also was going into your sources or lack thereof surrounding the Jackie Bradley saga and how the Mets signed Kevin Pillar. So that's where we were at. I rambled on.
Sources were great. I was rambling also on Instagram. So you were rambling here. I was rambling on Instagram. And I kept telling them on Instagram that I'm pretty sure you were rambling here. And I was right.
How many live viewers do we have on Instagram?
It doesn't tell me. I mean, we went back and forth. Before we had 2, which was cool.
Wow.
So hopefully we can grow. These are ways to grow. My computer's being very slow still.
Early days.
You can hear me, right? You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My computer's being slow. I think it's
in the middle of talking about Kevin Pillar and how Kevin Pillar and Jackie Bradley are similar players.
Yeah, I mean, very similar players.
They're similar players, but yeah, why don't you interject here? I've spoken quite a bit over the past 5 minutes.
Obviously, similar players. I think they're not as good defensively as Bradley Jr. as people may think. If you look at the metrics, they're actually pretty far down on that list. But Pillar,
I just told the viewers that Pillar is probably a better defender than Jackie Bradley Jr., but the Jackie Bradley Jr. probably had a slightly better bat.
Well, statistically, Bradley has a better glove. Statistically, over the past 2 years, but that doesn't mean
they're both great.
Per value, I'm pretty sure Bradley's going to get. He wants a multi-year deal. I wouldn't do that.
No, that's what I was saying.
I'd rather take the short-term deal. Glad we're back here, by the way, guys. Now I feel like my computer's finally going. It out of nowhere decided that it wanted to restart and update my whole computer. I right away blamed Todd's internet and then blamed my own internet, and it was neither. So yeah, we are back. Free agent signings. There was a bunch more that happened outside of the Pillar. Yankees did some minor league deals. Todd, it was Jay Bruce and Derek Dietrich.
Don't sleep on those deals. Those are the kind of deals that when we're in June and Glaber is out with a hamstring injury and Gio has a wrist problem and whatnot, that those guys if those are the type of guys that could get hot in Yankee Stadium and have an impact for a couple of weeks. It's also possible that neither of them make the roster.
Hmm. Well,
Both
I
are
think
possibilities.
it's going to depend if you have expanded roster or not, too, like we did last year.
And
If there's an expanded roster again, which is very, I would say, almost a certainty because of the fact of they need extra players up. I mean, maybe not expanded roster for game day roster, but you're going to have an expanded roster that's coming with you game to game. So, um, yeah. And that's talking about, like, obviously we're talking about baseball today, but I'm surprised that other sports haven't adapted that, where you have X amount of players that are coming with you, but not necessarily traveling with the team, just there in case something happens. And if you need 2 or 3 guys for the game, I'm
wasn't that
surprised.
that's kind of what the NHL does with the taxi squad now.
Yes. But the problem with the NHL is they're still letting. Oh no, you're right. You're right. But I think the major outbreaks we've had in the NHL have literally
The
taken
Devils.
out the whole team. Yeah, they take out the whole team. They don't. So it's kind of you don't need 2 or 3 guys. You need 13 guys. So yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that. But yeah, regardless, I actually think the Yankee signings they're fun. They're good. They both have minor league options. Pretty sure how those will work if they don't make the roster. I think they will have the option to go down to the minor leagues, though. Still, they can go back to free agency if they want to. I think that's
I
how
believe
veterans.
they're both minor league deals.
Yeah, but I think once you're a vested veteran, I think minor league deals work as if you can choose to elect free agency um, instead of the minor leagues if you feel like you can get a better opportunity somewhere. I think that's how vested veterans work.
I don't know. Other
But
random hit on the Yankees front. I forget what reporter said it. They're close, I believe. Not close. They've had talks with Brett Gardner. They want him at $3 million, which would keep them below the luxury tax. I don't know what Brett thinks about that. I don't know what other opportunity Brett is getting. No offense to Brett. Is he going to get could he start on a team that isn't a contender? I guess so. Is that what he wants at age 36 now? Or I don't even know. He's older than 36?
37, I think.
Yeah.
I think he would. I think he actually would have plenty of options. But I don't. He's a good veteran to have in a clubhouse for a younger team, even. I just don't think that's what he wants. I think I like to think he's going to go back to the Yankees or he's going to retire. I think that I don't see him going anywhere else. And I also don't think he'll just accept $3 million. I don't think that'll play either. So
it's better than $0.
Well, is it? Or would he rather just retire and be done? Like, I see what you're saying.
I would take $3 million to sit on the bench at Yankee Stadium, but that's just me.
I know, again, I kind of
and someone is going to get hurt. Aaron Hicks will be out with an oblique, and then Giancarlo will strain his hamstring, and before you know it, Gardner's batting third again.
Just a quick thing that was
a high-pitched chuckle.
Yeah, it was. I kind of ignored it, but I shouldn't have. I should have addressed it.
Weird.
Just on Twitter now, before we get into the thing, Bob Nightendale.
Breaking news.
This is not breaking. No. This is not a report from him. If it was a report from him, I would not be saying it. But this is a quote from the Dodgers coach, Dave Roberts. He said that Jansen will open the season as the closer. He's earned that opportunity to start off the season as a closer, and I don't know where he feels like he's earned that opportunity. But I just wanted to say that because I feel like saying like over the 10 years he's earned it, or saying he's the best possible chance for us right now, I get it, but saying he's earned it, I don't know.
I would go with
Yeah, I would go with a committee until you figure it out. I wouldn't lock in on anybody. I wouldn't lock in on anybody. I don't understand. I understand, like, as a coach, you want these guys to build up confidence. I just don't understand why coaches ever commit. I know the media wants you to, but you don't have to. And the way closers have been over the last, I would say, 3 years, outside of a handful of them, they've been pretty hit or miss in this league.
The
So,
bullpen in general is really just a throw crap at the wall until
yeah.
it sticks situation,
And
which can change from week to week.
it's been that way since home runs started becoming more of a thing in the MLB. It's much harder for them to be consistent out of that pen. We don't have Mariano anymore. We don't have Hoffman anymore. We don't have these guys anymore. Like, you don't need to commit unless you have one of those guys. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think right now if there's any closer I would mindlessly commit. Josh Hader, I might mindlessly commit if depending on the team. But you can't even say that in Milwaukee because if he goes on a 5 game span where he gives up a bunch of runs, you have Devin Williams who can easily take his place. So I'm trying to mindlessly think of any team or any closer, I should say, that it's like you are the closer. There's no like who's the best closer in the league right now? It's weird. Like I have this new magazine next to me that I love things, and they rank them. So I'm gonna see who they have, but I don't know. I feel like we're in a weird spot with closers. So the best closer they have, and this tells you everything you need to know about where we're at closer wise, is Liam Hendricks.
I was thinking around that.
It's Liam Hendricks, Josh Hader, Brad Hand, Kirby Yates, Taylor Rogers.
Kirby.
Yeah.
What about Melanson?
Melanson's not even up there.
That's Melanson. Melanson signed with the Padres, so that's another.
Yep. Another
signing.
small deal. Yep. It took a little less to go there too. I mean, honestly, the setup, the two
I would have stayed with the Braves, but neither
Yeah.
place is a bad place.
But the two top setup guys might be better than all the closers. Nick Anderson and Devin Williams. They both might be better than all those closers.
Well, Nick Anderson had a small sample size last year. I wouldn't
So did
go
Devin
crazy
Williams.
with him.
I mean, if you want to go down that road, so did Devin Williams.
Yeah, but then when he got into the playoffs, Nick Anderson kind of fizzled at times.
That's true. But that was one of those moments where I was like, I'm talking about closers, and I'm like trying to think on it. There's nobody that stood out, and I was rightfully so looking at the top closers in the league.
Oh.
Yeah, we talked about the rest of the contracts before we jump off this. We talked about Tatis, Pilar. You just talked about Melanson, Bruce Dietrich. Jake Arrieta goes back to the Cubs on a 1-year deal.
What are the Cubs doing? I still don't know.
I mean, I guess you could say they need arms, so they're gonna just bring him back at a. This was another guy, and well, I mean, you say what the Cubs doing. I guess the Mets don't need the starter, but it's clear that they want a starter, and we're just watching them go. Jake Arrieta goes. Who's the other starter that went? I know they're in on Taijuan Walker, but someone went last week. It'll come to me. It was obviously
Walker's still free agent. He tweeted from the golf course the other day.
Yeah. They're in on Taijuan. I would think if they're going to sign a starter, I would look. If you're a Mets fan, I would anticipate him over Jake Odorizzi. I think there's more smoke there, and I think Taijuan's a good risk to take because he does have the tools. But yeah, I guess that's all the signings anymore.
Signed Harvey to a minor league deal, but
and they signed Felix Hernandez too.
Well, yeah, the Orioles are building the best rotation from 2014. So,
I mean, I guess that's what you do when you don't have that much money to spend.
Might as well take a shot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and then the other big one was Rosenthal today going to Oakland for $11 million, which I know it's 1 year, but that's a lot of money. But
A's could do a variety of things there. 1 year deal kind of gives them a chance where they can see what they are during this period. Which they could go either way, really.
Yeah.
Or it gives them flexibility, obviously. I might have included a team option in there, but 1 year they can ship him at the deadline for a rental. And a team looking for a rental.
And if you look at the way Oakland's worked over the past few years, they've gotten a lot of these late-inning guys who need to rebuild. Not necessarily rebuild because Rosenthal was good last year, but you talk about Liam Hendricks, Joakim Soria. These guys went there and just had success. So it's not a bad spot for Rosenthal. I just didn't really understand the contract, but again, not a bad spot. I wanted him on the Mets, but I'm happy we wouldn't spend $11 million on him. I don't think that's the place we're in right now.
I mean, with the A's, I hated the Chris Davis for Elvis Andrews deal.
I forgot that happened.
That deal made 0 sense for either team in my mind. I don't know. That doesn't make either team better. I guess the A's had a bit of a hole at shortstop with Semien going, but you don't. I'd rather, I don't know, get a prospect in there or something.
I just think
Elvis is washed.
Well, just because Elvis is there, it doesn't mean he's starting, right? So you're getting rid of the contract of Chris Davis.
He's getting paid a good amount, Elvis Andrews.
But Chris Davis was getting paid decently too.
At least he meshes.
I'm just grateful that a team like the Athletics, who have a low salary or low payroll, are trying to do things creatively to figure out something. That's the only way I can look at that.
Doesn't hurt to try in the American League.
That is true. That is true. So we're going to be going into round 2, episode 2 of the MLB Preview, the DSN MLB Preview. I promise you I will cut these up into small spurts at some point. I will get to that, and we will have them all maybe closer to the ending of them so they all come out at once, or have them premiere. Whatever. We'll figure it out. Point is, last week we went through the National League East. I still have our stuff here. We went through, obviously, NL East. We went through the over-unders. This week we actually have an over-under to go off of. We predicted where they'd finish in the division and potential record, and then an MVP Cy Young predictions. So, as I did last week, I will let Todd kick this one off and pick who he thinks would finish last. I think we're going to agree.
I mean, it's the Pirates. They might be the worst team in baseball. I think they are the worst team in baseball. Should I go into? I'll go into detail about the Pirates. When I look at their roster, the main thing I know about the Pirates is that their shortstop Cole Tucker dates Vanessa Hudgens. That's the main thing I know about the Pirates. And I saw this week that Cole Tucker in 2012 tweeted a lot about Vanessa Hudgens, or not Vanessa Hudgens, about High School Musical and wanting to be with a girl who liked High School Musical. And what do you know? He's with the star of High School Musical herself, Vanessa Hudgens. So great for him. Props to him. Too bad he's on the worst team in baseball. They are a AAA roster. I've looked at their pitching staff. I could name one single guy if they were walking down the street. I know they shipped Keone Kayla. Did he go to the Padres? I forget where.
No. I think I can pull it up talking if you want. But
I forget where he went.
It was not the Padres. I just saw it yesterday. Oh no, Padres. Padres, yes. Padres.
They still have Gregory Polanco, right?
Yep.
He's kind of washed.
I feel like his name might have been mentioned in a trade at some point.
I mean, yeah, they're trading everybody who might have any sort of value whatsoever.
He's still with the Pirates.
Yeah. They're going to trade anybody who has any value at all. I've looked. They have decent prospects. Cabrian Hayes is supposed to be really good.
O'Neal Cruz.
Obviously, Hayes is a couple years away from being a star if he fulfills his potential. Otherwise, on that roster, I wouldn't know any of them if they were walking down the street next to me. If they said, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I play for the Pittsburgh Pirates," I would be like, "Okay."
That lineup's really bad. The only thing I like in it is Brian Reynolds. He's a great WAR guy. He gets on base. He's a good fielder. Could play all over. He's a really nice player. I don't want to
trade piece.
Yeah, although he could be a guy they keep for a while. Hopefully, I would hope for
anybody for a while.
That's true. They're bad. I'm looking at them. They're so quick. Shout out Lindy's Sports. I've been getting their baseball magazine for I think 15 years now. Even though I can get everything online now, shout out to you. I will keep buying you every year. They usually put their lineups out for these books like a little bit before things start happening, so it's sometimes hit or miss, but I'll always buy it. I love them. It has their schedules on it. It's awesome. But anyway, the lineup's putrid. The bullpen looks putrid. There's really nothing. I mean, the best pitcher is Steven Brault or Mitch Keller. Lineup wise, you have Brian Reynolds. You talked about Brian Hayes, Gregory Polanco. You have the shortstop coming up, Cruz, who also Cole Tucker, but O'Neill Cruz is a top prospect too. I just think they're really, really, really bad, and maybe they could turn it around the right way, but I think they have a long way to go. Obviously, we both think that they finish fifth. Todd, what would you project win loss? Or do you want me to tell you the over under first, and then you can base it off that? How should we do that? We could do it either way.
Yeah, tell me the over under. Why not?
So their over under is 59.5.
Under.
You're saying under, so what do you think their record is?
I'm gonna say 55 and 107.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down for you. 55 and 107, Todd believes.
It's one of the worst rosters I've ever seen.
Yeah, just to stay different, but still similar, I'll say 52 and 110.
Whoa.
I think they're I know I go extreme sometimes, but like you just said it. Sorry for people on Instagram. The connection just went. We're back though. I know it's like we say this a lot, but this like is the worst lineup I've ever seen. So
like the Tigers are bad. And we'll get into the AL Central in a few weeks. The Tigers are bad. But they have pieces that you can be like, okay, they could go somewhere in a couple years. Like there isn't like it's not like all hope is lost for them.
Yeah, I mean
the Pirates are a total like they won't see the light of day for at least 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'm gonna reset this live video that's going off. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I think they are ways away, but still, it's like there's a little glimmer of happiness if you're a fan. I guess you could find ways to look at the future. I don't know, but
if you're if you're a Pirates fan, you're hopeless.
Yeah. Oh, you said Tigers?
Tigers, you have some hope. Pirates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go cheer on the Penguins. Go cheer on the Steelers. You're done. Like it's over.
I thought you were saying the Tigers had less hope than the Pirates. Sorry.
No.
We were gonna fight there. Yeah. So Pirates, we both have the under. You have 56 and 55, 107. Is that what you said? 55, 107. I have 52 and 110. We'll move on to the next team, which I think we might disagree on. So I'll let you pick the fourth team first. I wrote mine down, so I had the benefit of looking ahead.
I want to say this is tough. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Brewers.
Whoa. Okay. We're definitely different, but we can go to the Brewers.
I think the Cubs are trying to do something. The Cardinals obviously are trying to do something. And the Brewers can't really hang with those two teams. And I like the way the Reds roster is constructed. I think they have a fighting chance. Their pitching staff, their starting pitching is better than the Brewers. The Brewers starting pitching, I couldn't really name a name on there, but you can kind of stretch things out with that bullpen, having Devin Williams and Josh Hader there. I wouldn't be surprised though, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised there. Obviously, they have Christian Yelich too. This could be a year where if things go south quickly, the Brewers are a team that I think would pull the plug. You start getting rid of your Josh Haders. Maybe you ship Christian Yelich. The team, their pieces there, they can't ever, and they do this. This is kind of their MO, where they have a couple of great pieces that could be top guys on championship teams, but they don't fill in the pieces. They signed Colton Wong, which is a nice addition, but those four teams in that division, I think, are going to be very competitive. If you tell me the over under, I think it's going to be
Well,
high.
before we get into that, I mean, I'll tell you. Then I'll go in a little
Okay.
bit. It's 82 and a half. 82 and a half for the Brewers. We're very different on this team. Very different. I actually think this team has the ability to. I have them finishing second in the NL Central. Um, I think this pitching staff. You said you can't name him, which I think is part of the allure. But Woodruff and Burns are two guys that can spin it. They're not great names, but they can spin it. Lindbaum, Hauser, and Lauer are guys that can just keep
Burns
it
was a
going.
big contributor to producer Bob's fantasy baseball team,
And
which is something we need to talk about later in the podcast, actually,
we
fantasy
will.
baseball. But
Yes. The back end of that bullpen, Sutter, Williams, and Hader is unreal. One of the best back ends in the league. You talk about the outfield. Yelich, Kane, and Aviso Garcia is not a bad outfield. Narvaez behind the plate. I just think they have guys. Shira, Kessenhira, he's still there, right? They didn't move him. Why do I
yep,
feel like he's there?
Vogelbach has moments.
Urias, Arcia. I think they have a team that if they get hot enough and they can add the right piece at the right time, and they got rid of Ryan Braun finally. So Ryan Braun's a free agent. I mean, I'm knowing the Brewers, knowing Braun, they'll probably just sign him back to a 1-year deal in like a week. But for now, he's on the team.
I think in general, the National League is going to be a lot better than the American League. You're going to see in interleague play, probably National League teams beat up on the American League. It's just it's a better league.
I actually think this division has the potential to be one of the worst in baseball, though, win-wise. Because A, you add the fact that they're kind of balanced and they're going to beat up on each other. And B, outside of the Cardinals, I guess I just spoiled something, but outside of the Cardinals, I don't really think any of the teams are very good.
They're the worst division in the National League.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Maybe not. Maybe, yeah, that's fair. That's more fair to say. That's more fair to say, for sure. But yeah, I think they finished second. I will take the over naturally. I think they win 89 games. No, actually, as I'm sitting here, my number dropped one. 88. I like 88. So that would make it 88 and 74. 88 and 74. Yeah, I have them going.
I'm gonna go 10 games less than that. I'm gonna go 78 and 84.
78 and 84. So that's obviously under 82 and a half. So we're different on that one. And as soon as you said Brewers for the fourth, I had a feeling we were going to be a little different there. Next team for me, so they would have been my fourth team, so we can jump to them. It's the Cubs. I think the Cubs are in a dark spot. I think they're going to move Chris Bryant. I think Baez won't be moved, but they may lose him next year, but that's looking ahead. Their starting rotation outside of Hendricks is just not good. Their bullpen is just not good. Their hitter-wise, you have Rizzo, you have Bryant, you have Baez, and you have Contreras, but I don't think there's any guarantee that Bryant will be here all year. I don't think there's a guarantee that Wilson Contreras will be here all year. We've heard his name too. I think this team is a spiraling team, and I don't think they're very good. Their over-under is set at 79.5, which kind of leans to what I'm saying. The pitching staff is bad. The pitching staff is very bad. Their bullpen was one of the league worst last year, and it's just gotten worse because they haven't added anybody. What was their bullpen ranked last year? That was me saying that with
they signed Trevor Williams, Brandon Workman, and Yankee fan favorite Jonathan Holder is on their roster.
So, like I said, their bullpen is terrible.
Trevor Williams isn't terrible.
I guess not. But bullpen.
They signed Austin Romine with Wilson Contreras. That's some catching depth. I feel like this team hangs on. This is like their last ride this year and next year. I think this is a team that they'll be in a similar position as the Brewers, and they signed Jock Peterson too. Don't forget about that.
Great.
Where this could go either way. They either are good at the deadline and try and add on, or they're crap and bye bye Chris Bryant, bye bye Javier Baez, bye bye.
Their best bullpen pitcher last year was Jeremy Jeffries. Last year was Jeremy Jeffries, who they let walk in free agency. Besides Trevor Williams, they have not added anything of substance.
Brandon Workman
Your
is
closer,
terrible.
he was terrible. He was terrible in Boston last year, and then he went to Philly and got beat up. I know that because
he got spanked at Philly.
He was bad in Boston too. Because I remember the Mets played him. We beat him up for 3 straight days. I mean, that's all I know. And you look at the starting rotation. You're sitting with Kyle Hendricks. After that, you talk about the Brewers not knowing names. I don't know many names on this Cubs team outside of.
They still have Kimbrel. Zach Davies was a huge part of my fantasy team last year. That was part of you Darvish deal. Zach Davies put up some numbers. Yes.
He's their number 2 starter.
He's not bad. He's still young.
I think this is this. I think they're terrible.
Arrieta could have a resurgent year. I am not closing the book on the Chicago Cubs. I will say they won 84 games.
84. Okay, so you have them at 84 and 78.
Yep.
84 and 78 for Todd, which means he's going over. And where do you have them finishing?
I wanted to say second, but now that I think about it more, we're third.
Third for Todd and the Cubs. Trying to think where I'd have them number-wise. Definitely under. I don't want to go too crazy. I'll say 76 and 86.
No.
Yes. No. And I think it could be worse.
The Cubbies won't let that happen.
I think it could be worse. I think they're the kind of team that I think it could start off a little rocky and they could literally spiral into oblivion. Especially if they move Bryant, especially if they move Contreras. Baez
that's a different story.
But I'm forward thinking in the fact that I don't think they get off to a hot start because their pitching is not good. You need pitching in April. Their pitching is no bueno. You could say Davies is good. Fine, I'll give you Davies as a good, nice little pitcher. He's not a number 2 starter. So you're already looking down the barrel. I think they start off slow. You're thinking about Bryant trading. You're thinking about Baez's free agency. I think this team spirals straight down into the floor. So 76 and 86 could be generous for them. And
hey, Chicago, what do you say?
The Cubs are going to win today. Cubs are going to lose today. Next team will go to the Cincinnati Reds. By proxy of elimination, Todd has them finishing second. Oh, wait, actually, I can't say that with certainty, but I think I was right. Yes. So Todd has them finishing second. I have them finishing third. I said that, and I was like, wait, the Cardinals still exist. I just am thinking because I think they're the logical. Cincinnati comes in at 82.5 over under, which I think is low, even though I don't think they're anything of substance. I do think that number is low. They obviously haven't lost. They have lost a key piece in Trevor Bauer. They lose Trevor Bauer. Yes,
he's more replaceable than you think.
Well, that's kind of why I feel that I have them at 3, but I think they're a strong third. I think they can compete for like an extra wild card team because we're going to see very quickly if they have built a good culture there where they can overcome these kind of things, right? So if Sonny Gray steps back into where he can be, Eugenio Suarez, Luis Castillo, if they can start to just grow their way back and create a system there rather than a team that relied on somebody. I think you're right there. I think they'll be a good team. I don't think they're better than the Brewers right now, personally, but obviously we differ on that. I'll jump in quick here. I'll give them the over, but I think it's barely. I'll say because naturally I don't think I liked it as much, but my first reaction was to enjoy the number. So I'll say 84 and 78.
It's fair. I have them at second, but I think it's a similar win total to what you're saying. I would say 86 and 76. I mean, they have a solid 1, 2, 3 at the top of that rotation with Luis Castillo, Amir Garrett, obviously our guy, Sonny Gray. Wade Miley is a decent fourth or fifth starter in your rotation. And having signed Doolittle as kind of Archie Bradley's replacement isn't a bad move to make either. Outside of that, in their bullpen, I couldn't really name anyone else here.
Raziel Iglesias.
I
Wait,
feel
they
like
lost Raziel.
I feel like their bats are kind of guys who just get hot and then get cold. They're streaky guys. You got guys like Jesse Winker, Nick Castellanos, Aquino could be key moving forward.
Shogo,
Yeah, Shogo is an
Moustakis,
interesting
Votto.
pickup. Yeah, Moose is a nice pickup for them. That fills a need. Obviously, Joey Votto puts up numbers. I think he would be a superstar if he played anywhere else but Cincinnati. And Suarez puts up numbers. It's I just think that division when a lot of these teams are better than these teams are going to have similar records to some of the teams in the American League, but just because they play more of the better National League teams from the NL East and NL West. I think if you put some of these teams, I think if you put the Reds in the NL West or the AL West, they could potentially win that division. That division is putrid in my opinion.
Mhm.
I would say so. Reds 86 wins, maybe top out 88. They could be a fun team that gets into that second wild card and kind of makes a team like the Mets or someone sweat a little bit. But I don't think they would ultimately get there. I think only one team from this division gets in the playoffs if we're using the pre-2020 format and the two wild cards come from the other divisions.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it. I think they're that where we have them 84, 86 games. I think that's the kind of their average. I don't think their floor is super low though. I think their floor is like 80 wins. I don't think they're a 70 win team. I think
They're a
their floor is
500
higher.
team.
Yeah, their floor is higher, but their ceiling's a little lower. I am interested to see how they kind of build off of what they've done systematically. Obviously, Bauer comes and goes, but they have a system there where they brought a lot of guys in that worked on analytics and spin rate, which is a big thing in MLB this year. They have a lot of guys that worked off it. So I'm interested to see what kind of system carries forward with the Cincinnati team and the Cincinnati staff.
And Sonny, before his Yankee days, was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He kind of lost his reputation when he went to the Yankees, and that didn't work out for whatever reasons. But in a place like Cincinnati, he's been able to thrive. Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray are a high quality 1-2 in a playoff situation. That rotation could be dangerous.
And they have a huge bat in Eugenio Suarez. I mean, he is a masher. So there's hope there.
So
Joey Votto, yeah,
it's a team. If they're hot at the right time, if this is hot at the right time, I wouldn't want to play them.
Only thing I keep thinking back to is how in the playoffs Bauer went on absolutely dominated in that Braves game, and they just couldn't hit in that whole series against the Braves. They just
Right.
couldn't hit. So I keep thinking back to that. Moving on to our both number one team in the NL Central, it is the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think they're pretty good. I think their pitching could let them down at times, but I think hands off, they're the best team in the NL Central. Over under is a low 86 and a half. I wouldn't say low, but 86 and a half is their over under. It's about, I think it's close to right for them. I would put them closer to like that 88 and a half, I feel like, but good enough. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, they're mashers. They have a good young pipeline with Nolan Gorman, Harrison Bader.
Harrison
They
Bader is good.
they bring Yadier back to be that guy. Um, it's a good team. You know, you have
Yeah,
Jack Flaherty. They're a nice team.
it's a well-balanced team. If
Yes.
this team was in the NL West, they would finish third. If they were in the NL East, they probably would finish third too.
Yeah.
I have them going over that 86 just because they're in this division. I'll say they go 90 and 72. Wainwright, we don't know injury wise what he's going to be like, but they obviously have Jordan or John Flaherty at the top of that rotation. Jordan Hicks has had moments. Jack Flaherty.
I was gonna say
John
Yankees.
Flaherty, Yankees
Yes,
broadcast
they were.
team. Also, well known John Flaherty for his hit in the game on July 1st, 2004. A little fun piece of history here.
Relax.
In that famous game, July 1st, 2004, which is the game where Derek Jeter did his famous dive into the stands, which thankfully he was okay. We thank him. He's a warrior. That was the game that game went into
Oh,
extras,
he's okay.
and
Fuck him.
John Flaherty hit the walk off there. So John
I'm
Flaherty
so
on the board.
glad. I'm so glad that you said thankfully Jeter's okay, as if it happened yesterday. I'm very glad. I'm very glad we brought that point up.
In my mind, that game happened yesterday. That game is one of the clearest games in my head in general. But back to Jack Flaherty and the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Mikolas has had moments here and there.
He's gone.
Carlos Martinez,
He's gone. He's
he's
gone.
gone.
I believe he got traded to the San Diego Padres
And then
last year.
forget I said Miles Mikolas.
No, you're right. He's on the. Wait, no. Okay, hold on. Hold the phone. He is on the St. Louis Cardinals, and this is why I'm going to tell you I thought he was on the Padres. So as you've seen on our Instagram page, shout out Instagram, we've been doing every day the countdown up until opening day. And I looked up his number before, and instead of ordering it and telling me he pitched for the Cardinals currently, Padres, Rangers, they had it ordered as Padres, Cardinals, Rangers. So I insinuated that he got traded. I was incorrect. Todd is correct. He is on the Cardinals, and he's pretty good. Keep going.
Yeah, Mikolas is all right. Carlos Martinez has had moments here and there.
Jordan
Three of the
Hicks.
top. Jordan Hicks. Edman has had moments here and there. Tommy Edman he was a guy you could pick up on fantasy waiver wires last year and pick him up and have him be a key part of your team for a week or two. Paul DeJong can get a hit when you need it.
Matt
Carpenter is here and there where he's kind of a guy that you could have off the bench kind of or can play all over the field and you can stick him anywhere and kind of be a utility guy that fills in the lineup. Not that he's the greatest of all time defensively. And you have probably two of the top 10 to 15 players in baseball in Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. So anytime you have two players of that level on your team, you're going to have a fighting chance. And this division is kind of, I would give this division, if I had to give it a letter grade, it would get a B to a B minus. And they win 90 games.
Yeah, you touched on Tommy Edman, and he reminds me of like a Brandon Lau type player. Consistent, can do a bunch of different
Somewhat
things.
high praise.
I like him a lot. I think he's going to show up this year, especially with Wong now gone. He's going to need to show up. I kind of love him. And I hate doing this, but I literally had it written down as 90 and 72 as well. So for this one, I would love to just be different, say 89 or 91, but I'll just keep it. We can agree. So
Sure.
I'll say 90, 72. I kind of liked that number. I think them and the Brewers, it comes down to the last weekend or so. That's fair. We can disagree on that part. I'm glad we disagree on that part. Before we get out of the NL Central, we have to give you our MVPs and Cy Youngs of the quote-unquote division. At the end, we will give you our MVPs of the season, all that kind of fun stuff. But for now, we'll do MVP first. I'll start it up here. I think my MVP
should be very easy.
It should be. But if I'm going off my predictions, what needs to happen to get them there, right? I'll say it'll be Christian Yelich.
Fair.
Because if I'm saying Brewers are going to finish second, something's going to have to happen with Yelich to get them there, in my opinion. So I'll say Christian Yelich. Toddy?
I'm going to be to the book here, and it's Nolan Arenado. I mean, you add a guy like that to your roster, that puts them over the top in this division, in a very mediocre division. It's not an awful division, it's mediocre. And you get a guy like that, and that turns your team that bumps your team up from a B to an A minus as a club. And maybe they're not an A minus. Maybe they were a B minus, and now they're like a B plus.
Fair enough. Cy Young, I would love to get cute, right? And go, ooh, I love Josh Hader as a potential. Like, doesn't have to be a starter, right? But that's too cute. Then I like to get cute and go Luis Castillo because I think he's a monster. But I think you have to go strict here. I think it is Jack Flaherty. I think he's the best pitcher in the division. Todd's shaking his head no. I wonder who he's going to pick. I can actually guess it in my head right now.
Yes.
Before I guess, it is Jack Flaherty for me. Todd, I'm going to guess because you are who you are, you're going to say Sonny Gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Sonny had a great year last year. His reputation, like I said a couple minutes ago, has been a little wrongly brought down by his Yankee experience. He's a guy that he wasn't. Some guys just can't. It's not a criticism of him. Being in the Yankee pinstripes is a different beast. It's not for everybody. It's just a personality thing. It doesn't mean that he's that he's mentally weak or anything like that. We wouldn't say that. To people who say that, I think they're wrong. I just think it's a matter of a personality and a fit where if you're used to pitching in certain situations in a certain way, you don't want the distraction and kind of the overhead that being a Yankee has that being a Yankee carries. That doesn't mean he's incapable. So I think when he's in situations where he can zone in on his craft and not necessarily have to deal with answering BS from the media or being in the back pages of the New York Post or whatever, he can focus on perfecting his craft, which is what he's done over his years with the A's and last year with the Reds. He was all-star level pitcher, one of the best ERA guys. Not that ERA is necessarily that reliable of a stat anymore, but he was a high-quality guy in the National League and pitching realm. So I would give it to him.
I knew that was when it was going to happen. Although I don't think Sonny Gray is the craziest pick. I do worry about when we get to the AL East and the Yankees come up because I feel like you're going to have MVP Clint Frazier, Cy Young. Who would be your Cy Young? It wouldn't be as simple as Garrett Cole. It would be like Michael King. Like I just think
you're Debbie DeGod.
Debbie DeGod. Yeah, it's going to be a disaster. Next week will be the National League West. Also, little shout. No, not a shout out. It's not a shout out because I don't like him. It's a call out. And I hope one day he'll come on this podcast so we can go face to face.
Oh, here we go.
I have a major issue. Started here. I love Barstool. Love Barstool Sports. Love their content. Love Carabas. Love Frank the Tank. Even though he spurned
Frankie.
Frankie.
What's going on, Frankie?
You got to come on.
Come through.
Second, the one Barstool guy I can't stand.
Hold on.
Okay.
Let's cut this up. Let's do this in a way that we can cut this up. So let's start this. Frankie the Tank. We had something in place that we could have had you on the show.
Mhm.
Nick had DM'd you. You said you would come on. Obviously, what happened during that week, we know all about what happened with Rough and Rowdy, how you became a big star with your pointed and precision call-outs of Jose Canseco, who, for the record on this podcast, major juicers like Jose Canseco, we do not like. No Jose Canseco types are people that we are fans of. So
Frank said he's going to dog his daughter.
Hey,
he had a leash on.
Sometimes you gotta get in your opponent's head. If he's your enemy, you gotta get in his head. It's just Frankie is calculated in those ways. He cut some epic promos during that week, and we would love him to cut a promo on this show about the New York Mets. I would like to talk with Frankie about the food options at Citi Field. I have a lot of beef, no pun intended, or pun intended, with the food at Citi Field. I've had my experiences. I would like to hear Frank's commentary. That's my bit.
My spiel towards Barstool is Barstool Hubs, Eric Hubs. I strongly dislike him. I think his tweets are. Let's be really fair as we're human.
Dislike people.
No, I don't dislike him as a person. No, I don't dislike him like as a human being. I don't think that's fair. He's done nothing to do that. But when I look at a personality and his Twitter account, I strongly dislike his Twitter account. He is obnoxious.
You dislike my Twitter account.
But it's different because I know how you feel about Hubs.
I don't have a good or bad opinion of Hubs.
Okay. Regardless, me and Hubs got into it last night about the Knicks. We get in about the Yankees during times of the year too. I think he is relentless. I love when Carabas makes fun of him and does that voice. It's one of my favorite things on the internet.
Same.
And Hubs, if you ever want to come on here, you are welcome to come on the On the Bump podcast and talk sports. And we will get into the Yankees, get into whatever you want to get into. I will even do a separate podcast if you want to just do a straight interview one-on-one. I don't care.
The Nick Barlow show.
I want Hubs. I want Frank the Tank. I want it all. That's my call out.
Right here, right now.
And that was the episode.
The Elimination Chamber.
That was episode 16 of the On the Bump podcast. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you joined us live on YouTube or live on Instagram, sorry about the technical difficulties, but I believe when we went off, I kept talking on Instagram and Todd kept talking on YouTube. So somebody was talking on both streams at some point throughout the whole thing. So worked out. NL Central's in the books. Next week is the National League West as we get even closer to baseball. Todd, another great episode.
Another great job.
We'll see you guys next week. Have a good week.
Later.
All right, man.
What a show.
I didn't end it yet, of course.